Hi guys, welcome back to SwitchUp. Today we're going to look at some hidden gems. Now I know many of you are brand new Nintendo Switch owners, but we've done a few of these lists over the last couple of years. We'll pop links to those in the description if you want to check them out, but we're going to try and keep them relatively fresh by including a few new hidden gems. What's worth picking up? Let's find out. My first hidden gem then is a game called Railway Empire. Now, I'm a big fan of Tycoon games and strategy titles, but I hadn't played any of the Empire series, and certainly I don't know a great deal about trains. It's set between 1830 and 1930 and essentially sees you doing exactly as the title says. You build up a railway empire, and it's remarkably interesting. As you progress and build over a very large map, you're given a number of different objectives, and there are also scenario modes and free play modes, as well as a sandbox if you'd rather just go those avenues. We have reviewed this one on the channel, so we'll pop a link to that down in the top pinned comment, but it's a very good game and it has seen a number of patches as well since launch. If you're remotely interested in looking for a good Tycoon game on Switch, then this could potentially be a good option.
My first pick then is a game called Deathmark. Now this is a visual novel, I guess, although it does have some point and click elements to it, and it sees you playing as a man who wakes up one day with a strange scar on him and finds out that it means he's been marked for death and has until dawn to try and defeat the spirit that gave him the mark. You'll play a few different chapters, having to search locations, finding items to then use against the spirit in a battle to the death. And what I really enjoyed about it, as well as the unique story, was the way it does merge those point and click elements with it. Now I don't know if this is a hidden gem in terms of people that like visual novels, but if you aren't that familiar with the genre, this is definitely a good one to start with.
Next up for me then is a game called Rebel Galaxy. Now if you ever played Freelancer back in the day, this essentially acts as a spiritual successor to that title. It describes itself as a space-based Western adventure, but it is very much like Freelancer. You can take on a variety of different contracts and jobs for the factions throughout the game, and the combat was surprisingly good. It has an interesting mechanic whereby you can hold a trigger to lock on to the nearest enemy, and then do fine-tune aiming using the right stick. It actually works really well. If you've already got the excellent Everspace on the Switch, then I would highly recommend potentially trying this one out.
My next pick then is a quirky little platformer on the Switch called Pankapu. Now this has a lovely hand-drawn art style and sees you starting off as one character, but you do pick up other playable characters as you go, and they all have a unique trait to them, such as having a bow and arrow or a double jump that allow you to get further into the levels as you go along. It has an overworld map and is quite a long game actually. I think it took me about 15 hours to finish, and the last boss is incredibly difficult, but it's one of those I think that's probably been buried amongst a ton of new releases over the years, as it did come out quite early in the Switch's life, and is definitely worth playing.
Next up, I've got a game called Star Renegades, which comes from the people that created Halcyon 6. What makes it really interesting is the battle system, which is almost action-based, turn-based combat. So you can interrupt foes, you can do counters and combos, and as well as anything, the art style is absolutely beautiful. It has a lovely pixel art 3D mix, so you'll have certain lighting effects reflecting off your characters. I guess a little bit like they did with Octopath Traveler in some areas. It has that blend of 3D and pixel art. The overarching story is quite interesting as well, but there were a number of issues at launch which wouldn't really make me recommend the game, but since then the developers have gone back, patched it all up, and it plays much more smoothly.
It's quite an interesting one to describe. It's a game called The Persistence. Now this one is a horror game, although it does have some roguelite elements. Now I know that not everybody likes roguelite games, but it's in the sense that the levels are procedurally generated every time you die, and when you do die you will go back to an initial safe space. Having said that though, you can get upgrades, so not everything is lost every time you have a run, and the basic idea is that you are the sole survivor of a disaster on your ship, and the computer AI has cloned you, and every time you die you come back as a new clone. It's quite a creepy game, very interesting, a lot of stealth elements, a bit of fighting, done in a first-person perspective, and I picked it up very cheap physically, about £10 the other day. Definitely worth seeking out.
Phoenotopia Awakening was a real surprise to me. It's very similar to the old Zelda 2 title from back in the day, and the developer had originally created a slightly watered down version of this that was on the internet, just available as a flash game. They went back to the drawing board, stripped it back completely, and they've achieved the vision that they originally intended with this game. There's no getting past the similarities to the Zelda titles. Some of your weapons are very similar, and it could be argued that the world design itself is also quite similar. That being said, this time around you've got 50 different enemy types, there are 12 different bosses to fight your way through, and one of the best aspects, as it should be, is that wonderful soundtrack. It's going to take you about 25 to 30 hours to complete, but it is brutally difficult as well. It's not an easy title, so it may take you a bit longer.
Okay, the final game for the list then. This is a game called Lovecraft's Untold Stories. Another game that's based on H.P. Lovecraft. They seem to be 10 a penny these days, but this one is surprisingly good. It is again a roguelite, although again you do save your progress, so if you get to the next level you won't lose all that progress if you die, and you are basically searching within a mansion, fighting off creatures from Lovecraftian lore, and it plays very similarly, I guess, to a game like Enter the Gungeon. It has a pixel art style, but I did really enjoy that. And again, it's a game that goes on sale quite regularly and can be picked up for cheap. If you like your roguelites and are looking for a new one, I would definitely recommend this one. Okay, there you have it then. There are 10 hidden gems that we would recommend on the Nintendo Switch. As Mark said at the beginning, we have done a fair few of these lists now, and the links to those will be in the top pinned comment, as well as links to any relevant reviews of the games in this particular list. A big thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe of course, and until next time,